introduce to the lunch table Nelly and Sam. They are co-workers of ours, fellow co-workers, fellow educators, and we just wanted them to come on to share their perspective on, equity and the current situation, the current climate, whatever is happening right now. So they were very passionate, and we were having conversations with them. So we wanted to, hear some more, and we wanted them to come on and share. So welcome, ladies.
Hey,
Welcome. And just like when we're in school, sometimes some people will walk into the room and have lunch with us one day. So it's the same thing. And then they'll join in on the conversation, or they might just come to say, oh, hey. And then they realize the conversation that we're having and say, well, let me take a seat and be a part of it. So that's kind of what I feel like is happening now. And we just want to start by asking, and it's something that we have to ask each other, like, how are you and how are you feeling, especially with all that's going on? How are you?
Wow. It's a very simple question, but like the feelings are very complex because we all feel everything, right? You feel sad, you feel happy, you feel worried, you feel like you want justice being served. So I feel like how I feel right now is like a roller coaster of emotions, but primarily I am happy about that the issue of institutionalized racism and structural racism is out in the forefront. And I think that in my years of living, I've never seen it so evident in media before. So evident that students are like breaking lessons to even talk to each other about it. So that makes me feel better. But the state that we're in with the Black community, it's an uproar. People are upset, people are angry, and you have to kind of understand that, right?
I feel very heavy right now. I feel like everything that's happening is a lot, to say the least. There are no words really to summarize everything that I feel. I definitely agree with you, Nelly. It's been really tough for me to have these conversations with my first graders. I know that it might be a little easier to have conversations with kids that are older. You guys teach upper grade kids, and in moments like this, I wish I could like be my complete activist self. But, I have to find ways to not scare the kids. So I've been trying to find really great literature and just trying to kind of find healing through teaching the kids more about what's going on.
Yeah.
I think Shireen would agree with Nelly with the roller coaster thing, because it's when we all talked earlier, we did not come with only one emotion. Everyone was feeling multiple ways at the same time. So, yeah.
And that's what I was going to say, Nelly. Like I said, a cluster of emotions, but I feel like the roller coaster explains it better, as far as when I was telling them, like 1 minute, like it could be within the same hour. 1 minute I'm angry. 1 minute I'm sad. Like it's crazy. But yeah.
And then there's that the additional feeling of pride that pops up of the that fight for that one cause, that one purpose. But then as Tabby said earlier, the disappointment is there also. So Nelly really summed it up very well.
I'm curious to hear, did any of your kids, Samantha, know about what was going on?
Oh yeah, definitely.
In my class today, I read a book called Most People, and this class in particular, because I teach 2 classes, this class in particular is quiet for the most part during morning meeting. I mean, our morning meeting's pretty early. It's at 9 a.m., so they're kind of just waking up. So my class today didn't say anything, but Hedia and I had a conversation, and with the other class, she read the same book and had the same conversation and asked, do we know what's going on in the news? And one kid straight up said, yeah, the police are killing Black people. And he's a white boy who will probably never experience anything like that in his life. And for him to have that awareness and understanding, I'm definitely super proud. And we want to make sure that we continue that dialogue, because it is a very alarming thing for a 6-7-year-old to say and hear and see, so how do we kind of move forward with continuing that conversation.
And I think that goes back to Sam, because we were discussing earlier the conversations they're also having with their parents. And, that goes back to the fact that he has a solid home system that is really helping him understand what's going on with current events. And they're doing it right, But
Yeah.
I think that also that we need to understand, and I say this all the time, no matter where you're in pre-K or in 12th grade or in a college level, I think sometimes we underestimate what the students know and what we might find to be fragile, or what we might find to be, things or off topics that you don't want to talk about because it's very controversial. I think the students definitely have conversations within themselves, with parents, with community members as well. And yes, Sam, it's more evident in the upper grades because at that point, especially in our school community, we build them up to have that courage, to have that leadership, to voice their opinion in a very concrete, respectful way. But even at kindergarten, first grade levels, you'll ask children, right, that I hear like, why are people wearing black, right? Why is the social media have all these black coverages? And that's in their way, their social conscience, like, hey, I haven't seen this before, so like, what's going on? And it really depends on parent buy-in, right? To have those conversations, whether you're 3, whether you're 4, whether you're 5. I'm pretty sure in this lunch group, your parents talked to you about activism from the time that you can't even remember, because it was something that their ancestors and something that they had to live in, that they wanted you to be educated on. So I definitely think that in all age perspectives right now, at some level of their growth, they know that something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We agree with you, Nelly. We actually spoke about that, and the kinds of conversations that parents are having with kids, and just moving away from being fearful to be open and to let them understand that it's okay to talk about race, it's okay to talk about equity, it's okay to talk about these topics, and it doesn't matter the color of your skin, or it doesn't matter where you're from. Just be open and speak about it, as long as it's done in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to our next question, which is, how does your stance as teachers make you an advocate for equity and race?
I feel like taking this job on, you kind of put that badge on immediately. That's like your first duty. You make a commitment to teaching a broad spectrum of children. And I feel like a lot of teachers might feel too politically correct when speaking about it, or it's not their place, or, they're white or another race, so they don't feel like they should be speaking on matters that don't pertain to them. They don't want to step on toes. But it is so important to understand our role as educators goes beyond academics. It starts at a foundation of understanding equity and equality and making that known in your classroom and building your students to be empowered and proud of who they are. That's definitely why I became an educator. I definitely didn't have enough representation as a kid in a lot of ways, and I wanted to be that for my kids. And I make a huge effort in everything I do at 133, from Book of the Month to Brain Power. I try to make sure that my kids know that I am their activist in everything.
I mean, I started teaching, believe it or not, I started teaching 10 years ago, right? I went into my 10th year of teaching. And one of the things that I could say is that times have changed. I remember that a decade ago, people were going into teaching because they thought, quote unquote, thought that it was like the life to have a family with. And like teaching was that career that gave you the flexibility. And one of the things that I do have to say now, all the student teachers that I get, all the emails, all the people asking me about teaching, and the first thing that I say is, if you are not aware of inequities, you cannot do this job. Like, you cannot do this job. You should not be signing in for this job, because it comes with the territory. You're going to be teaching students that don't have the same religion as you, the same beliefs as you, the same upbringing as you. And you as a teacher, when you sign that contract, that's what you're signing in for. You're signing in for educating a population that you might not know anything about, but that has to be the core of your teaching. How are you adapting it, right? How are you taking the time to understand your students so that they feel valued, so that they feel empowered? And I know that a lot of teachers concentrate on curriculum, but I always said it before, right? It's more than that. And that teaching is not that anymore. Even though curriculum and academics are what gives us our data, right? And what validates the growth that they're doing. But guess what? We don't have report cards. We didn't have state tests. And the students are out here protesting. They're writing speeches, they're writing emails, and they're learning. So I feel like now equity, inequity, racism, all those social constructs come with the job. And if you are not a equal participant to be open to it, even if you're scared to do it, then I feel like this is not the career for you anymore. And I think that that's just the honest truth.
And it's so true when they say teachers wear many hats. I am a true believer in that. We are constantly switching off different positions within the same school day, just to support our students in every way possible. And I feel like when, like I said in our conversation earlier, it shouldn't have to be that something is on the news for us to talk about it, because these things happen every day. And how are we, that's what we need to focus on. How are we going to put in the work and do the work so that we could stop these injustices happening, not just one day, but every day.
If we're thinking about it, really, I agree with all of you. But and also, in addition to what you guys said, we have lawyers in our classroom. We have lawmakers in our classroom. So what we do and what we say matter. And regardless of what the parents can instill at home, we make the difference. What we say to them is a big deal to them. So it's our job should not be taken lightly. And we shape what our future would look like. So we have a big job.
And I do agree with Nelly. These conversations are meant to happen. Not just when we think they're of age, because there's no age for this work to be done. There's no age for you to teach a child not to be racist. Point period. There's no age. They could be in the womb, and you have to speak. If you're acting it and you believe it, then speak it.
There's no age to teach compassion. There's no age to teach love. And they're learning all these other things from young, right? So why not teach them that we're all the same, human race, like Gladys said. We're all the same. We should all be treated well. And we mentioned before, guys, like it's not about equality, because we notice many people now, they're saying, well, you have equal rights. So what's the fight all about? It's not about equality. It's about equity. And yes, we as educators, and we're in a good place in teaching where we let our kids know it's about equity, but the world needs to know,
And teaching is a profession. Teaching is a profession that heavily depends on relationships, like building those kinds of relationships. And we're not only talking about building relationships with our coworkers, we're talking about building those kinds of relationships with our students, so that our students are able to have that level of trust that they're able to listen to us and they're able to believe what we're saying. Because we, as Joe said, we actually shape who they become in some sort of way. So, believe it or not, we have what we say and what we do impacts how they behave, sometimes even more than their families, even more than at home, because it's what the teacher said. I'm a teacher and my kids come home and I'm trying to help them with something, and they're like, no, but my teacher didn't say that. I'm like looking at them, but while they're listening to us, but some things that are happening, or some of their learning is going to come directly from educational institutions. And we have to understand that our role is very integral in making sure that we, decide how they move forward and what are they hearing, and the role that they'll play eventually.
So our third question is for you, Sam. So you marched, and we wanted to know, what was that experience like?
So the first march that I went to was at Barclays Center maybe 3 days ago, I want to say. And actually, specific date, I think it was Sunday. And that was the day where, all of those videos circulated of the people who wanted to go into the Target on Atlantic Avenue and loot, and the powerful movement of everyone saying no and stopping everyone. So I was able to witness that as a very peaceful protest. It was super empowering. The police didn't intervene at that moment. I know things might have changed when I left. And I didn't stay there very long because it got late. But yesterday I went to Bed-Stuy and I marched on Fulton Street, and it was incredible. That was probably the most empowering moment of my life. Wow. So many like-minded people who looked totally different than me. Everyone looked different, and it was just so beautiful and emotional. We marched past people's homes, and it was there was a moment where we were all cheering everyone on who was cheering from their windows, and there was a black man sitting next to his black daughter and his black son, and he was just crying. And they were tears of happiness and and solidarity, but it was just so hard for me to see. It was kind of like a dream to have to march for basic human rights. And once we got to the precinct, I kind of turned angry because the police just automatically assumed that we were going to be violent. So they called in backup, and the woman was like, she was furious and telling the police to keep eyes on people who were seemingly calm and just holding up signs and trying to get their point across. And there was a moment where I rode my bike to the protest, and I had my sign in my backpack. And I started going into my backpack to take my sign out, and two cops came closer to me. And then I had to think about it wow, I'm taking something out of my backpack. What do they think I'm taking out of my backpack? And that's just scary, because as a biracial woman who's very light skinned, I definitely was less threatening than a black woman or a black man with darker skin would have been. And so just thinking about that experience and marching for my boyfriend and my nephews and my future children, it was the only outlet that I knew. And I can't wait to get back out there.
I was looking through your stories, and I was like, it just looks so powerful. There were moments when you guys were chanting, and then there were moments where it was just a moment of silence. I think at one point you guys were kneeling, and I was like, wow, it's so close to me. I should have been there. I should have been there. But I love how powerful, it just felt just by looking at it. So I could only imagine how it felt for you being there. And, I think that's one of the hard things to think about with the police just automatically thinking when you guys got to the precinct, this is something I'm hearing now, but that there was going to be an issue. And I think that's what's kind of causing most of the riots now. Most of the protests start out peaceful, but, then the fears start building, they get closer to here. And then even Gladys mentioned earlier, there's good groups within there's bad groups within the good group, So, but yeah, I just want to say it looked like it was a powerful protest, and it's good.
That was being promoted in the media. When you look in the media, they don't really want to show that people are actually out there being peaceful, that they actually are fighting for change. So they kind of show the negative sides of that. But similar to Shireen, I really, it was very motivational to see your story and see your post that you have on Facebook. On Instagram, especially that you're a teacher, and a lot of time as teachers, we kind of stay away from social media, and it's kind of a little bit not afraid, but kind of censor what we post because so many times it can just come back and affect us in our professional lives. So thank you for that.
And thank you for sharing. I also want to agree. I want to agree with Shireen when she said that the fear is what's causing the riots. Like, if we're thinking about it, there is inequality when we're protesting. They want us to protest, but they don't know how they want us to protest. If we think Colin Kaepernick, he was kneeling, they were mad. Now we're in the street marching, they're mad. And because of that, they're pushing us away. And if we think about a few weeks ago, people were protesting about wearing a mask. They were this energy. They didn't receive it. They were protesting about getting a haircut, and it was fine. But then when we're speaking about the life of Black people, everyone feels threatened. Why? I don't know.
And they were armed. I think that's the biggest issue. They have like AK-47s on the hip, but you're afraid of my words. You're afraid of what I have to say and my sign. And I think back to what you were saying, Tabby, I definitely, like, as a first year teacher, Charlie was my mentor, so she might have remembered, but I was trying my best to be very conservative and tone it down. You guys know I could be a mess sometimes, but I feel like the most powerful thing that I have as a teacher is I definitely try not to be something else. I definitely want to show my students who I am and who I really am. And I march for my students now and before and in the future. I thought about them while I was out there. And 10 years from now, I don't want to see any one of my students' names in the paper. I don't want to hear about any of my family members in the paper. And so I just felt like it was almost like a duty. Yeah.
Very powerful, Sam. And just to let you know, I'm very proud of you. And when I saw how you were representing us, it just made me smile. My heart really smiled because you are a younger teacher coming up, and just to hear how passionately you speak about representing and advocating for your students, that's the kind of educators that we want to leave behind. I'm sounding like I'm about to retire, but
but it's true, yeah.
It just gives me joy to know that, okay, there's still teachers or there's still educators out there that are just as passionate as we are when we leave. So we'll have those footprints left there.
And I feel like we always say thanks to those that came before us, because without their work, it is sad that we're still fighting for the things that they were fighting for. But it shows you how powerful it is to set that example, to never give up and just keep going. And I think that is very important. You just said something very powerful about how you are, you were marching and, to be an advocate for your boyfriend, to be an advocate for your niece and nephew, you feed your kids. And that just that just shows you how powerful and empowering this could be. And how we're leaving a legacy, and we're, these are roots that are going to be very difficult to, take out.
Yeah. And Nelly, you protested digitally, like we were following your stories also, which were very powerful. What surprised you the most about that?
Well, I just want to say, Sam definitely inspired me. One of the things that I spoke about with my fiance was like, wow, the next time that this happens, like, I need to go. Because I feel like I was very present in social media, but like I wanted to feel what like Sam felt. Like I wanted to feel like the people, like I wanted to be immersed in it and like fully experience it. Just because when I was in college, I marched for the immigration rights. I don't know if people remember that, but years ago, it was when the colleges were thinking about not accepting immigrants with undocumentation. And we marched. And I remember that day. And it's something that you kind of like, it sticks with you because you feel like you made a change when you're involved. And I decided to do social media because some of the same things that Tabby was talking about. I was, as a teacher, I was scared about, being frowned upon, about taking action in a march, right? About not knowing whether it was going to be looked upon as a good or a bad thing. I think that I let kind of the construct of what a perfect teacher is kind of get in my head. And then I was just like, well, I don't really want to do anything. And if it's going to, affect me negatively and like, my students look up to me in XYZ. So I said, you know what? if there's anything else that I have that's mine, is my social media presence, right? So when I'm at work, they can't see me, right? But if, my social media presence is me. And what I did was I advocated in social media. And one of the surprises that I had, believe it or not, was some of the backlash. Like the backlash of, if you put up Black Lives Matter, you're anti-white, you're anti-cop. And I really didn't understand until days later, until I'm looking at the comments, letting it sink in. And I'm like, how is this movement being perceived so negative when the movement, the real core of the movement, are injustices happening to Black Americans in this country that were accused? Let me say this again, accused, not charged, accused of having something done to them, unarmed, and they're dying. That's the validation of the movement. Why is this happening to this marginalized group when they're not posing a threat? So it was a surprise to me when I saw, and I'm talking about, I lost friendships, combating family members, things like that I don't know, maybe I was blindsided by, but I definitely didn't expect it. Like, I felt like all weekend I was being combative with people in social media, because they will say something like along the lines of, well, like, they're looting and they're doing this. And they're like, there's not bad cops. And I'm like, yeah, there's not bad people, but they're dying. Yeah. Right? Oh, we want our cops. We want them to come home. We don't want them being hurt. And we're like, yeah, well, I want my Black fiance to come home, and I want my Black children to be safe. So I feel like people are not looking at both sides of it, right? You are saying all these things about cops. You're saying all these things about anti-white, right? Or white people, but we want the same thing. And I think that what people are not seeing is that we're being denied that right when these things happen. We're being denied the right to be safe outside. I mean, even with the whole mask situation that everyone was talking about, I'm from Brownsville, all right? I came from East New York. The way that they were treating minorities with, you're not supposed to be outside, it's quarantine, XYZ, but it wasn't like that in Park Slope. It wasn't like that in Manhattan, uptown. It's just like, so in my head, when I put up Black Lives Matter, when I was putting up all the posts, I was fighting for that unbiasedness to stop, for that racist to stop, for everything that's associated with being Black being negative, even with our own people in the Latin community, because I don't know why Black heritage is being denied, like it's not there. It's just a matter of where in the boat in what country did it stop first, and where did it land at last. But we all have it, right? We all have it. So that was the surprise that I got, was like that. Again, when anything comes with a Black movement, negativity follows back of it. And that is the construct in my head that I'm still trying every single day to understand the why. Why is this happening? Why, when you put Black Lives Matter, people want to say all lives matter? We know, and we stand for that, right? When the environmental march happened, Black, white, Asian, Indian, everybody was in it, and it was fine, and they looted, and they did things. But when you talk about Black Lives Matter, because you're talking about Black lives, now it has all these negative connotations with it. So I did it because that was in my heart to do. Like, this is what I truly believe in. But I was appalled by the things that I saw on social media. I was just like, is this America?
And I just want to say, Nelly, I know you feel like, oh, you didn't go out and you feel like you didn't do as much, but we saw your passion, and you were advocating just as hard, and you were making sure your voice was heard, and it was heard. Like, and even like just through your social media, my eyes were open a bit more of how people are against the Black Lives Movement, because I pride myself. I'm like, okay, within my friends on Instagram and so on, most people, well, all of them, probably like one or two, they're for it, right? They understand. They're like, yes, we believe. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm making sure that I'm not surrounding people who are not for my cause. But I feel like in your instance, it's much better because then you can teach, right? So you can help them understand, okay, these are people, you need to understand why I'm saying Black Lives Matter, and I'm not against cops, and I'm not against, people of other ethnicities and other races, but I'm just saying at this point in time, it's important for you to take into consideration Black lives.
Because those are the cases that we are seeing. Why is it that black people are dying? Why?
I think what hurts me the most, it's when minorities come to the comments and then they go, all lives matter. And I kind of have to take a step back and not get into it with them, because if I get into it with them, I end up saying things that I don't want to say. But it's just like, it gets you so angry. Like, you could be where I am right now, just like that. And you're really not trying to understand what I am saying, because I think it's deeper than just not supporting Black lives. It's denying your African roots, denying everything that makes you part of Africa, and just stepping away from that and say, well, I am white passing, so I don't have to worry about that. But then we have a group of white people who are just doing the work, blonde, brunettes, who are doing the work and promoting the movement. But at the same time, it hurts to see other people who are acting as if, well, I'm not affected and I'm not going to worry about it. But I think there's even a picture on Instagram, but there's like a group of people, white people brunching, and then there's like a bunch of other white people protesting behind them. It's like, get your priorities straight, people. We're dying.
And it's to say that the movement goes way beyond just black and white. It goes way beyond that, because I consider myself an Afro-Latina. I consider myself an Afro-Dominican, because I know I have my African heritage. And I came across a post yesterday, and it was a group of Afro-Dominicans in the Dominican Republic holding a Dominican flag with the Black Lives Matters right next to it. So the movement is I don't understand how is it that we live in America and some people in America don't understand, and there's people that live out that are in the movement is international, but yet there's some people in America that still don't get it why we're doing it.
Because then it will flip, and those who are benefiting right now from how the system is, it will start to change. But similar to what Jose was saying about other minorities posting all lives matter, as educators, what shocked me the most on social media were just other teachers who are actually teaching in communities of students of color who actually did not understand that we're not saying only Black Lives Matter. We're just saying Black Lives Matter right now. And they just could not understand the concept. And they saw nothing wrong in the
This is rough too. A lot of people have been silent on the matter, and that's even more painful than saying anything, I think, especially knowing the population of students that you teach. Speaking about educators in particular, we all know our student population, and we all have students of colors in our classroom. And when you're silent, it makes me feel like, well, what are you really thinking? Like, well, whose side are you on? And that makes me very uncomfortable. Because again, back to what Nellie and I were saying, and as we all know, as educators, that's our badge of honor, just being able to be those advocates for our kids. We have to speak about it.
And there's a term going around where it's saying that the silence is deafening, Sam. And this is what we're talking about. Because if you don't take a stance, then what do you represent? What are you saying? And especially as educators, we have to represent our community. We have to represent not only students of color, all students. So what are we saying? Because if you don't speak, then everyone will, silence is consent. So, what are we saying? What kind of message are we sending? I posted, and one of my parents actually commented on, my story. And she was saying she is not able to understand how we're feeling, but just to let us know that she stands with us. That was very comforting because, they just to let you know that, okay, they're standing with you too. Makes a difference.
Yeah. Can I just add on something to this conversation? Because I just wanted to share something that I found very powerful. I was put in a position where I was getting emails, right? Basically saying like, in a very professional way, and it wasn't nothing against us. It was just saying basically like, we want resources, kind of like we want the teachers, like an underlying message, right? We want the teachers to talk to the children about this, right? And this is the problem that I had with the email. And I'm going to explain to it now. When you put that type of, I'm not even going to say pressure, but when you put a topic like that only on a teacher or only on a school system, you are not doing your due diligence, as a citizen in this country. You are not being, you're being silent. You are holding on to a privilege, right? Because if you are not being uncomfortable talking about this, then you are not doing your job. That's the way that I feel. And I think that it is unfair for the parent in the school community to only put this on a school when this is a world issue that we're having. It's not a school issue. It's not a Black issue. It's not a Latino. This is a world issue that we're having because this construct, when you accept that you have African heritage and Blackness, it comes with negativity with it, right? So I think that as a community, and something that I want to address is that we have to talk to the children, even if we don't know, even if we're uncomfortable, even if we need to educate ourselves and kind of unlearn things that we did. That's your contribution. And it's not going to be perfect. And it's going to be messy. And the children might come out with more questions than you have answered. But if you do that, that's dismantling the whole structure. And that's the reason why when I hit reply, I was very aware of saying, and on my side, like how Gladys says, as an Afro-Latina who considers myself an ally to the Black Lives Movement, I'll do it. But you have to do this too. You can't just put everything on like, school, do it. Oh, you, marginalized group, here, you do it because right? This is your experience. It's not about that. It's about talking about it and first reflecting on your own biases. Who are your children playing with? Who are your friends? Right? Where are you putting yourself when you're in constant learning of someone else's experience? So I feel like I just wanted to add that.
That's a very good point that you've made, Nelly, and it kind of segue into our final question of what is the end goal? What would you like to see happen in our society?
I think my end goal is to have this kind of conversation normalized. I don't want this to be a curriculum. I don't want this to be Black History Month. I don't want this to be Hispanic Heritage Month, right? I want it to be normalized. I want to walk into a school and be able to see the demographics of that school being represented. I want kids to be proud of their Blackness. I want women of color to love their hair. I want women of color to love their skin. I want all of this unlearning to happen, and it's not going to happen if we, all of us, right, don't correlate our own biases, because we all have them, right? We don't correlate our own biases and deconstruct. And also what I want to see is I want to see our white counterparts fight for us, fight for the same amount of money, fight for the same amount of access. And again, it all comes from all of that unlearning that you have to do and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that normalized.
Thank you.
For me, I think the change that I need to see is like a whole change in the system. I think we need so much prison reform. That's something that's really, really important to me. Even before this, there's an awesome organization called Die Jim Crow, and they work with incarcerated men and women, wrongfully or not, because prisoners are people too, right? And they provide anything they need, and it's also a recording label, so they allow them to record music. And I've DJ'd at an event, and my boyfriend does work with them also, and I just feel like prison reform is a huge goal, and also stopping police brutality and just educating our children now, educating adults now, educating elders now, and letting everyone know that we will not stand for this kind of injustice anymore. Really making sure that everyone's voice is heard. There's a party on my block always. And ensuring that our students and our Black people are empowered, just knowing that they are important, their lives matter. And it's beautiful seeing everybody chant that and everybody root that, because that shows that there's a bigger issue here. It's not us. So I think that the whole police force across the country needs a major internal affairs check. They need some serious training. And I'm sick of hearing about all of this training done by white people. You can't do a cultural training if you don't understand the culture.
Yeah. And I agree, Sam. I think a lot of systematic measures need to be put in place in order for there to be change, right? But I also think about some people just need to think about, like, just evaluate themselves and find ways to fix themselves. All the little microaggressions add up. All the little cases of implicit bias where you're just like, oh, you know, all of those things add up, and they might not even notice that they're doing it. So I feel like now with all the looting and rioting and everything that's happening, that's really, scaring people and getting them worked up, it will give them a chance to stop and take a look at themselves and say, okay, let me see, how am I as a person? I am not Black, or I'm not Latin or anything like that. So can I relate? Can I find ways to understand what's going on? Are there any things that I do myself, that can maybe make them feel the way that they feel, and try to fix those things? So I feel like a lot of people really need to self-evaluate and really get it together. But yes, and then mainly systematic measures need to be.
It's actually a picture going around. This actually, I'm sorry, Joss. This actually.
You go? Oh.
You wanna go?
Okay.
There's actually a picture going around where it says, if you need to fix it within yourself to then fix it at home to then fix it out in the world. And we need to start making those uncomfortable. We need to get uncomfortable in order to move forward. And that comes from yourself. Like, you need to do that for yourself in order to move forward.
Okay, great conversation, ladies. And we just want to thank our special guests, Sam and Nelly, for contributing
Thank you.
to the conversation. And, we could talk forever because the conversations never end. But we just want to encourage everyone to keep fighting. And remember, silence is deafening. So we need to keep the movement alive.
And we would love to have you back. So
can I have lunch with y'all?
Oh my God, didn't I say this?
I'm glad I don't have the same lunch period. I'm the only one that doesn't even have the same lunch.
Yeah. Maybe you have a prep
Come to third grade, Fab. Come to third grade.
Don't forget to like and share our video.
Yes.
Like, share.
You're on mute, Charlie.
You're mute.
I support you all the way, and I love what you're doing. And I think that you guys need to take this to YouTube and expand yourself, because teachers want to see this. I want to see it. I'm your demographic, right? And I think that you doing this, you're leading an example of that. All the things that a teacher in Mississippi or a teacher in one of these states that is not heavily populated with minorities, you could be their ally just by watching and be like, wow, I get it. I understand.
I just want to say,
stop the recording, but I wanted to share something.
This was supposed to be 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's gonna be longer. I guess it's gonna be in parts.